In your life that you never forget. Time on Martha's Vineyard is like that. You sense it immediately.
You know that every moment is precious and special, and however much time you could spend on this island is not enough to tell its story.
Each moment you spend here is a story. You can walk for days on its beaches and wonder about the first people who came and what they were like.
You talk with the islanders and know why they stayed.
They have a certain sweetness that blends with their environment, a sort of partnership of man and nature, where progress is among the most treacherous of concepts and words.
But progress has come. The island is changing. Tourists by the thousands come in summer with their cars, their noise, their money, their litter, their progress. They fill the beaches and crowd the quaint villages.
But theirs is just an interlude, and so is ours. A time to share, people to remember.
Story on this place, Phil?
Well, this was once the show place of Old Bluffs. It was built by Joseph Morningstar back in the early 1900s. He was a big importer, and he built it for his family and for a country place.
Now, of course, Senator Ed Brooke lives here.
Yeah, so it seems to be a magnet for big people. Built by a big man and occupied by a big man.
By the way, this is Craig Kingsbury, known by some folks on the island as the island character.
Yes, and as an island character, should be the one to tell us about some other characters who live on this island, people that we've heard a lot about and would like to meet. But I hear, at least you told us earlier, we shouldn't go near James Cagney's house, right?
Well, no, because James has had all the publicity and all the screen exposure that he ever wants to have. And he lives a private life. He likes to be up on his place, and he does not like to be disturbed.
Well, how does he keep people away?
Just by being himself.
Well, there are a lot of celebrities who come here, Craig, and I suppose they all come from the same thing that Cagney came here for, privacy.
That's right.
I know Mia Farrow, for instance. We were going to go and try and find her. Have you worked with her?
No, she's practically impossible. She lives way down at the end of a long woods road. I mean, people who make a living in front of a camera, when they're at their leisure, they don't need it anymore. They've had all they want. So the less those people are bothered, the happier they are, and that is one of the reasons they come here. If they want to be looked at and stared at, they can go to New York or some suburb and get all the staring they need and all the exposure. Here they want peace and quiet. Let them have it, and everybody's happy.
What's the wildest story you ever heard about wildlife here on Martha's Vineyard?
Wildlife?
Yeah, I'm talking, I don't mean deer and squirrel and things like that.
The wildest one I ever heard was the most successful housewarming in Edgartown about 35 years ago. So doggone successful, they burnt the house down. That was about the best I ever heard of.
Well, we mainlanders hear a lot of stories about the island people, and I don't know, somebody always brings up incest. I think Robert Shaw did, and things like that.
No more than any other place. I mean, Rough House raunchy and whoopee. We got it same as everybody else, but once again here, it's like one big family. People know what everybody else does. In the city, your next-door neighbor in the apartment might be a bookie, a drug runner, or a raving lunatic, and you'd never know it unless he broke the wall down and came into your apartment. Here, there's sort of an underground telegraph, and you hear what's going on in Edgartown. A lot of it's laughable and joking and fun and family fights and all that, but they all get out.
What's the serious business, though?
We don't have anything too serious. Never did have.
There really
It was mostly squabbling, drinking, brawling, and
But no serious business.
and musical beds. And that goes on everywhere where people are people. And a lot of comical stuff, you know. But nothing serious or nasty. We've only had 2 murders in my time.
How long you been here?
I came here first in 1918 with my grandparents.
Why Martha's Vineyard now?
Well, once again, it's a good place for guys that are a little bit left of center to come because we get along. We understand each other's freaky ways, funny things, and we get along with each other. We put up with them, and if you're basically a good guy or a good girl, it's overlooked, and what the heck, you don't have to conform too much. That's why so many young people have come here. As long as they don't violate any of the laws, or larceny or violence, people don't bother each other. Each one knows too much about the other fella to dare bothering him for fear the other fella would spill some beans on him. So everybody has to keep the big mouth shut and let the other people alone. We don't have any saints here.
Well, maybe no saints, but somebody who comes close bought a house here this summer. He and his wife have seen hundreds of interesting places, and they picked this island as their leisure home.
You just bought a house in Martha's Vineyard?
Yes, we did.
Decided to come here and buy a house and obviously spend a lot of time.
Well, we've loved the vineyard for a long time. We sail in and live on this boat. But this year we decided to come ashore and rent a house. And we couldn't resist buying it. So after we rented it this summer, we own it.
What do you think it is about the island that does that to you?
Well, the people are friendly, and the atmosphere is calming, old world looking, I think.
Really, since you're getting away from it all when you're out here.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a very friendly atmosphere, and you can look at boats any hour of the day or night.
I'm interested to find out if you had any hand in selecting the house that you bought.
Well, yes, I rented it sight unseen, but when we realized the moorings right in front, and then we could look at the boat, and our dogs would swim all day, how happy we were. Somebody made a bid on the house, so we just met it. We went to sleep that night saying, oh, it's such a load off our minds. And I said, really, the load ought to be right on our shoulders now. We've got the whole thing to worry about.
Oh, here he is now. Hello, Captain. You're working well. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
How much time do you spend here a year? Or
Well, it's hard to tell. Last year we got about 6 weeks in. This year it'll be a couple of months. Hope to get more and more as time goes on.
what brings you back year after year?
Oh, I think that's rather obvious to anybody, but you're telling people who haven't been here, I suppose. It's the natural beauty of the place, the combination of sea and air and great natural beauty on the ground itself. It's a very green island, as you know. Got great versatility in the island and the kind of topography, trees, forests, moors, sand. And that way it's got more than I think most islands have. I've got to say, though, that just having purchased a house here, the first weekend after the little squib appeared in the paper in the Vineyard Gazette that we bought the house, a lady walked up to me to a cocktail party. I didn't even know her. She walked up and said, I certainly hope you're not going to tell everybody you live on Martha's Vineyard. I'm just going to attract more people here, and we don't want any more people here. We've got too many people now. And kind of infers that perhaps I shouldn't have bought a place.
Do you get a lot of that when you come here, or can you find a way to get away from it all here?
Oh, no, I think that's one of the rather good things about the island. At least the islanders and the regular kind of summer people leave you alone, leave one alone. Tourists take notice occasionally on the street, but even they seem to respect the fact that there's something different here. and a person has a right to certain privacy. I don't mind it, as a matter of fact. I rather like it. I enjoy it. I like people. Meet a lot of interesting people that way.
You do. The island is really full of a lot of contrasts, which you said so poetically, by the way. You're a poet as well as a newsman, I'm discovering. We find some people want to preserve it, its privacy, its natural beauty, the beautiful elements that you described, and others say you can't stop progress, you know. It's so nice we have to have people
what is
here.
Progress? I think certainly you can't stop an expanding population from sharing in the natural resources of the country. That's the problem we've got in our national parks. In any great tourist attraction, there are more people to enjoy it, more people coming there, greater facilities of transportation, greater affluence despite inflation and all the other problems today. But there are more people available to enjoy these things, so there are going to be more people there. I think that people are the same the world around, though, whether they're Americans, Texans, Georgians, or Vineyardites. There's a quality about people. There's a quality that seems to be very similar in economic strata. Farmers seem to be much the same the world around. Television people, I suppose, are the same. But Cape Cod and on down to Maine, the New England Yankee is certainly still there. The conformity that has been brought to America by television and radio before that, and by the movies, hasn't entirely wiped out that great.
You think it ever will?
I think marvelous Yankee character, the laconic nature of so many people, you know, the yups, nopes types.
Yeah. You suppose it ever will?
A certain formality, you know. Tell people, please call me Walter. Say, never. I'll call you Joe. Never.
Like a picture postcard, something you'd expect to see on a picture postcard of a New England harbor coastal town.
That's exactly how you'd expect every
with a big
town
black
harbor to look.
schooner right in the middle
Right,
of it.
right.
But the people who came in here on boats this summer found a big surprise.
Boy, did they really. Edgartown Harbor has been invaded by Hollywood. They came here to make a movie about sharks.
However the islanders may feel about this intrusion of boats, barges, mechanical sharks, and a 100-man crew from California, the making of Jaws will mean well over $1 million in revenue on the island. They came in April and stayed through September because Martha's Vineyard did not prove an ideal location for the filming of a sea adventure.
Is it true that the art director is the one that chose Martha's Vineyard?
Yeah, the art director came down and looked at the entire eastern seaboard, from New York up to Maine. And I don't know why, but I had heard a lot about Martha's Vineyard as a small summer community that might suit this picture, and I suggested he go to see it. And it wasn't on the original agenda, but he went there, and he came back with about 30 slides that we looked at. And I saw other areas I saw the Cape Cod area, and I saw Long Island, and Martha's Vineyard was quaint enough, and the Edgartown Harbor especially was what we wanted for this picture. So it was sort of a joint effort on our parts to get ourselves in all this trouble.
Have you been sorry?
I'm a little sorry for a few reasons. The people in Edgartown and on the Vineyard have been great to us, but the sea conditions have been so impossible that it's really hurt our schedule and put a general somber note behind the scenes on the production, because we've been here 105 shooting days, and we were only scheduled for something like 65 or 70.
What's this done to the budget of the picture?
Oh, it's kicked it up another $1.5 million, unfortunately.
You have to put a big bird out because they can't see but there's no wire on it.
Signal the beep of the siren. Trip it off.
One more time. Shark comes up, bites at the mast, snaps 2 or 3 times, shaking the head, but always working his way into the mast. Are you sure? Start it this way. And Hats can bring one down.
The boat has sunk because the shark has come up out of the water, landed on the stern, cracked the boat in half. Robert Shaw has been dragged off the boat, slid off the boat, right into the mouth of the shark, and he's been chewed up, and he's gone. And now my character is left aboard the boat, and he's trapped inside the cabin, and the boat is sinking.
Is this your big scene?
This is the big scene, and I'm not going to tell you any more.
Okay, start it. Okay, Roy, action.
Bring it in, bring it in! Do you have nightmares, especially when...
Oh, of course you have nightmares. I mean, I think about, there are certain sequences like the one we're going to do right now that I've been thinking about for months. I've been thinking about in months what it's going to be like to be trapped in this boat while it's sinking. And what does a person really think when that happens to them, especially a character that's aquaphobic, as mine is, who doesn't like water at all. And I have nightmares about that, yes. And I think any actor who's working on a project isn't only working on it during the hours when he's shooting it. He's thinking about it all the time. It's a subliminal, unconscious thing that's going on.
How do you feel the last shot of the movie? John Clippers. Oh, I feel pretty good about it, actually, but I don't think it's the last shot of the movie. I was coming to Los Angeles.
How do the technical people, the special effects people, get a boat in a shape like that? Do they pump air in the air
They've got barrels with air in them and ballast that they can put the air in or let it out, and they can lower and raise the boat.
That's all for it. No more for it. That's the cut. That's the cut. Save it!
How about Martha's Vineyard? Your reaction to
Martha's Vineyard is a beautiful place, and if you're going to be over on the film, I couldn't think of any other place that'd be nicer.
How's your appetite?
Oh, good.
They've just given a lunch call.
During that lunch break, we boarded the Chappie Ferry to find actor Robert Shaw, who'd rented a house on Chappaquiddy. There, he and his 7 children enjoy a lifestyle similar to their home in Ireland. But he's been here much longer than planned and has a lot to say about the island character and the sometimes boring ordeal of making a movie.
We're just 3 people who just went on like this. It's become a way of life. I may even burst into tears when they finally, fire the gun.
Friends after all this.
Yeah, and it has been physically very unpleasant and even quite dangerous some of the time. The seas have been high, the boat sank 3 times, My death, going into the shark's jaws, it's a very unpleasant thing. The goddamn thing weighs about, I don't know how many tons, several tons, and the jaws absolutely come down on me with the hydraulic pressure, When you do it 14 or 15 times in this kind of weather, in the cold, slide right into it. And then the teeth come and bite you out of it. Not very nice.
From what we civilians hear about actors, Mr. Shaw, it seems that it would go against their temperament to have to sit around and wait all day for a 30-second
Sure.
shot. And how do you psych yourself up for this kind of regimen every day?
Scotch, vodka, gin, whatever. No, we all have different methods. I do tend to drink when totally bored. Roy does exercises, Roy Scheider, and sunbathes. Scheider does that, and Dreyfuss talks. Dreyfuss just talks interminably.
You're stoic, so you just sit around and wait to be taken.
Well, we go out there. There's just the 3 of us, Scheider, Dreyfuss, me, and the shark. And we've heard everybody's life story about 15 times now, their sex lives, what their mother did, what their father did. I think I know every detail of those 2 men's lives, and it has been, to some extent, very boring.
One of the reasons why it takes such a long time to make a picture like yours is because it's not the time it takes to take the take that takes the time. It's the time it takes between the takes that takes the time that takes to take.
How do you feel about Martha's Vineyard?
What I feel about Martha's Vineyard is a great place for a holiday, not such a good place to work, but it's very like my own private part of the world, which is the west coast of Ireland. The attitudes are the same. They think everybody who's not lived here for the last 300 years is a foreigner. Except, of course, you've got rich people here. There's a lot of skeletons in the cupboard here, you know. There's more incest going on in Martha's Vineyard than probably any state in the United States. Oh, yes. Scandal and gossip here.
Yeah, have you been able to discover
I hear it from the local dentist in particular, who tells me who's living with whom, and it's always been what you'd call a sophisticated society for many years.
Steve, as a director, how do you feel about this film? I know in your first film you had a lot of control, including co-authoring the script.
Yeah.
Not you working from someone else's work, and it's not at all the same kind of film.
It's not.
How is it as a director's film?
It's, well, I would call this picture a director's picture, and I call Sugarland Express a filmmaker's picture. I think I'm directing this film. I'm supervising the production in certain technological ways, as opposed to Sugarland, where it was more of an organic experience. Now, the reason for this is it's such a long shooting schedule, and the special effects take so many hours to rig that there's so much slack time that you really lose your concentration. And before each shot, you have to bring yourself around to the fact that you are shooting 30 very important seconds of film.
Try not to push him so far into the mast that one of the guide wires knocks his nose out of shape. Stand short, a little under and break water. Come up.
Yeah, the man down there with the camera, we might hit him with a fin, I'm not sure.
Well, he'll be in front of the fin if you could just come right from where you are straight up. Can you do that without moving forward?
Yeah, we can do that.
When I first was asked to do the film, I can't believe this is all going to come out now. When I was first asked to do the film, I said no. I just didn't have any interest in it. And I just said no. I said no 3 or 4 times. And Stephen asked me to come up to Boston, and we talked about the character.
This is the director.
Yeah. And we talked for 3 days or 2 days. And at the end of the 2 days, I said, okay. Because what was said in Boston was that the character would be A, B, C, D, and E. And through the fault of no one but Universal Studios. It is not Steven Spielberg's fault. I repeat that. It is not Steven's fault or anyone's fault. It is the fault of Universal Studios giving this film an arbitrary May 2nd start date, that the script was never together, and the script never got, in my estimation, to where my character should have been. And instead of it being an interesting character, it became a kind of nebulous function within the film. And as an actor, I am disappointed. I told Stephen when I first met him, when he told me the story of the movie, I said, this is a movie I'd rather watch than do. It's the kind of film that I would run to see. I'd pay $3 or $2, whatever inflation is going to have the prices be, and I would watch this movie and enjoy it, but I don't think I'd like to play in it. And Stephen said the character can be such and such and such and such and such, and he made it very attractive, and I said, okay, I'll do that. But because of the start date and because of the pressures on people to begin the film when things were not ready, the character never got to that point. And as an actor, it's been an exercise in futility.
Teeth in the eyes, break water. You want to bring in the water in there? And we'll use that for rehearsal, okay?
I like to think that the pictures that I choose are ones that I would like to personally go and see. And this is a great adventure story. It's just a good yarn.
Has it been exciting? Like, I mean, for you as an actor, even though it's only and you wait all day for a 30-second shot?
Sure, there's always the delays and the waits, but if you like the picture, you believe in the project, and you think that the end result is going to be fun, for you to watch as well as the audience, well, then it's worth it. And it has been worth it for me.
Actually, the actors have been, for me, the biggest joy of this movie. Without Roy Scheider and Rick and Robert Shaw, this film would have been a royal headache, and they've made it very livable. And they're very agreeable people, and they're very talented, and they all believe in this movie very much, and they've all made their own contributions. So here again, I can't say this is an auteur movie in any way or a filmmaker's picture, because so many, Roy and Rick and Robert, have all contributed their own ideas to their own characters and to each other in such a way that this is sort of a co-op effort to finish Jaws.
One of the terrible things about the American theater, film business or acting community or whatever word you want to put into it, is that you do your apprenticeship out in public. If you happen to make a success, and I'm 26 and I've got this success now, I have no... my area of failure is that much smaller. I can't go out and be bad.
Are you saying that you're going to be bad in Jaws?
In my opinion, yes. Well, I just don't like the work I've done, that's all.
You're an entertainer or an actor, or how do you classify yourself?
Well, when I'm alone and the shades are drawn, I like to consider myself an artist, but that's a word that actors don't like to apply to themselves too often without being hailstoned to death. I'm an artist. I would not do a film that was not my politics. Put it that way. My politics cover a rather broad spectrum when you use the word politics in a certain sense. Hopefully all the films I do, or the theater I do, or the art I choose to involve myself in will be commercial, although that is not the main criteria. The only criteria that I have ever used so far is this going to be an interesting part? That's the only criteria.
How does Jaws fit into that?
I knew you'd ask me that. The character, as explained to me before we began shooting, interested me.
And after you started shooting, what happened?
I had made a mistake. Thank you, Dick Zanuck and David Brown, but that's the truth. I'm only criticizing myself, but as an actor, it was a mistake.
I had to get the boat out of there, see if it will cut and set everything up.
We like each other very much, and it's nice when actors and directors get along.
Right, get a shot at Steve right now. Get a shot at this, Steve.
Have you pulled any benders, you yourself, while you're here?
No, the only time I'm ever drunk is on television. I'm never drunk in private life or at work, or we all know that. I mean, they say, listen, if you have to go on the Johnny Carson show, what choice is there but to get drunk? That's all I have to say about that. It's perfectly true. The funny thing about that is that...
That's our network, Mr. Shaw.
Is it? Well, no, but I mean, you know what I mean. You have to sort of compete with a comedian, and you get rather nervous. It's not like this kind of interview, but what I remember well about this, Lynn, you never heard this story. I was on the Johnny Carson show, and I was in a picture about Churchill. And of course, the old man died of syphilis, right? So I said to Johnny Carson, quite straight-faced, I haven't recovered from the disease. He said, well, you know, he seizes an opportunity like that. He said, you mean they really gave it to you? I said, oh, yes, you couldn't play the part unless you actually got it. And I said, the director was Richard Attendon, the producer was Carl Foreman. One of them held me, and the other gave me the injection. And I said, it's terribly painful, and I don't think that they've paid me enough to do this. Now, that was believed. Now, I got to Chicago on the Cup show, right? And he said, is it really true that you have this terrible thing that we can't... I said, listen, not only do I have it, I said, but they gave me the original germs from this old French woman who was still living in Paris, who was Lord Randolph Churchill's mistress. I said, she's still alive. And I said, but penicillin doesn't work against these old French women. Well, I said it just like that. You'd think nobody would believe it. Well, everybody believed it. We got about 15,000 letters. I get to New York.
From old French women.
From old French women. I get to New York, and the producer calls, Carl Foreman, very outraged. He said, how could you say something and lose your dignity and say something like that? I said, well, you know, one has a sense of humor or not. He said, please don't mention it again. I said, right, I won't. Now I'm due on the Dick Cavett show that night. The first thing, now Cavett had done that special, remember, on venereal disease and all that?
And had he fallen for the thing?
The first question he asked me was, is it really true that you have it? And I mean, I was stuck there.
You had to...
Columbia were going to sue me, you know.
They were going to sue you?
Yeah, Mr. Gardner. And Carl said that I was so undignified I would never win an Oscar.
Problems because you're so young, and the people react to you differently. Do you find it difficult being the leader? Is it this large, a project this large, a multi-million-dollar film?
Yeah, at times, especially when you're by yourself at night, it weighs more heavily than during the working day when your mind is on getting good films. And it's sometimes at night you realize that it's a great responsibility and you're juggling a lot of cash. And it's sometimes very frightening.
I notice you bite your fingernails a lot. Is that why? Because you're juggling all the cash? Or...
No, because I don't smoke, I don't drink.
Roy! Action, Roy. Go! Roy, can you go back to the door again? Tony, when I wave my arm, you hit it. Can you give me movement like that? Work at the door. Give me some glassing. Good, Joe. More to port. Great.
After Martha's Vineyard, more work on the film will be continued in California, and the movie Jaws should be in our local theaters by late spring. About that time, 26-year-old director Steven Spielberg plans to come back to this island to relax in and maybe even buy the log cabin that he called home this summer.
Well, I'll go back to Los Angeles, missing the sounds of silence, because I consider this house an island on an island, and I'm very used to Los Angeles. I'm very used to the constant buzz of the freeway, and this is one place that you don't have that. Matter of fact, there are no sounds around here at all, and it took 3 weeks getting used to. It took a couple of weeks trying to get to sleep at night because I didn't hear a constant presence noise out my ears.
We'll have more New England Our Way after station identification.
Newsmen, I guess, even when they're on vacation, still look at things through a newsman's eyes. It's just being like an old racehorse, you know. You hear the bell go and you want to run.
Well, you wonder what news there is in Martha's Vineyard. It's so quiet and isolated from here.
It doesn't seem like it would be anything like a big metropolitan area.
But it's enough to keep two newspapers going.
Yeah, the Vineyard Grapevine and the Vineyard Gazette here. This paper's been here over 100 years, and one of the guys who's been a lot of that history is the editor emeritus who calls himself the country editor, Mr. Henry Huff. Let's stop in and see if we can get him.
You know a lot about the island?
Well, how are you, sir?
Fine.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Step right out and meet our entertainment reporter.
Hello, Mr. Huff.
And who's
It's a
this?
pleasure to meet you.
This is Graham.
Huh?
Oh, Graham's a beautiful animal.
Graham is a very comradely animal. Wonderful companion.
I've heard from a lot of people on the island here that the man who probably knows more than anybody else about Martha's Vineyard is Henry Huff.
I think that's an exaggeration, but I've been around a long time.
How long?
Since 1920, as editor and publisher. My wife and I came here in the spring of 1920.
What kind of changes have you seen on the island since 1920?
Well, most of the change has been caused by the automobile. Of course, the changes are inevitable, but this last summer we were overcome with a flood of automobiles. And
why do you suppose that is?
People like to take their car wherever they go. And we wish they'd park their cars at Woods Hole and come over.
As a newsman, Mr. Huff, I'm interested in what kind of news happens here. Does any one story stand out in your memory as the most interesting or the best story you ever got your teeth into?
Well, I've been asked that, and after some thought, it all depends. If it's a big story, probably the hurricane of 1938 and its immediate aftermath. But then on the other side, on the small things, which we like so much, maybe it was when Everett Gale's brother bit the cow.
Are you kidding?
Bit the cow?
No. Well, he was milking the cow, and he was occupied, and the cow stepped on his foot. So he didn't want to do anything with his hands because they were engaged. So he leaned over and bit the cow, and the cow didn't mind much, but the cow moved off his foot.
How about the people that you write to and for? How would you characterize the natives of Martha's Vineyard, the locals, the people who read that kind of story?
A professor who was here briefly, well, he's not going to be here briefly, but he first came, and he said there was a sweetness about island people. He saw the sweetness in the man that came to fix his plumbing and the man who came to do ordinary work. they're contented here on the Vineyard, and they are still, in spite of modern communication, television, and all that. They are insular in a commendable sense. They're not insular in a limited or benighted sense, but in appreciation and in the meaningful relationship between themselves and the sky and the sea and the land.
How's that different from how mainlanders look at things?
Well, mainlanders wouldn't think it was so different, I think, but if they came here for a while, then they too would begin to change, and then they'd see.
Other people come here. A lot of personalities now, a lot of movie stars.
Well, that's been a gradual growth over a period of years. They come because it's the quality of the island. There's something about an island which is different. You have to cross water to get here, and like calls to like. It has a natural quality. It's always been unspoiled.
Mr. Hoff, when we talk about celebrities and movie stars gravitating towards Martha's Vineyard, I guess we can't ignore what happened here this summer with the making of a movie called Jaws. Do you feel that kind of thing is further changing and interfering with the life here on the island?
No, I think that the taking of Jaws was a lot of fun for everyone. And if we could have adjourned some of the day tripping and some of the sightseeing buses, devoted the summer to making the movie with Jaws, we would have all been a lot happier. They were a good gang. It was a lot of fun.
Mr. Huff, why have you stayed here all of these years on Martha's Vineyard?
I belong here.
It's as simple as that?
Just as simple as that, I think. People tell me I should go away. That's the last thing I want to do.
In your years here, you must have done a lot of reflecting and a lot of projecting into the future. What do you see in the future for Martha's Vineyard?
Well, I'd rather not look ahead. Rather not look ahead. After last
Are you
summer,
that pessimistic about
Yes, I'm afraid so. Unless something is found, unless something turns up to relieve the pressure, you can't undergo such an invasion of automobiles. So much.
An old acquaintance led me to Phil Spaulding. Phil was born in a house on 209 of some of the most beautiful acres here. They call Phil the Buffalo Man.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen a buffalo outside of a zoo.
Well, a few people raise them now.
I believe they do.
I didn't expect to find anything like a buffalo on Martha's Vineyard. What are you going to do with these buffalo?
Breed them.
Yeah? Then what? Sell them? Is there a market for them?
Yeah, I understand there's quite a good market coming up.
Why? People eat buffalo meat?
Oh, you're going to see it in the supermarkets pretty soon, I think.
Are you kidding? Buffalo steaks and things like that?
Sure. They're all over the country now.
Where'd they come from?
Nebraska.
I didn't realize you could buy buffalo. I thought there was such a shortage of them that, you know.
Well, they have to cut the herds down at these reservations because they can only feed so many.
Did you go out there and get them, or did you haul them back in a truck? Or?
Yeah, I brought them back in a U-Haul van.
How old are they now?
16 months.
Well, what's the story of the ranch here? How'd you come to that?
Well, my father bought it right after the war. And he was raising cattle here at the time.
Any idea how much you paid for it?
I think around $15,000. I think it was the...
My gosh, you can't buy 2 feet for that.
How much is it worth now,
can you?
I couldn't tell you. I guess it depends on what you want to do with it.
Had any offers?
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of hungry real estate people who'd like to have it.
Oh, yeah.
What do you intend to do with it?
Keep it the way it is.
Phil loves this island and wants to keep it just as it is, especially his property. But he shares some of the land with friends who seek a simple life. We visited with one such friend, Kate Taylor, sister of James Taylor, who spends her summer on the Spaulding farm, living quite simply near the pond in a teepee. Oh, look at this.
Isn't that something?
What a beautiful scene that is. Hello.
To get these poles.
Went to Maine to get the poles?
Kate, this is Tom. Come on out. And Pat.
Hi, Kate.
Good to see you.
Thank you for letting us come to your teepee. You're welcome. What a great thing.
Is this your home?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been here? Yeah.
Can you show us inside?
Sure. Would you like to go in?
Yeah, please. I'd love to.
That's the door.
I've never been in a teepee before.
You haven't?
I haven't either.
On the other side of the farm pit there.
What is this, a buffalo robe?
That's right.
Kate, how did you know about living in a teepee?
And how'd you know how to do that?
Some friends of mine have been doing it, and I read a book. I read a book about living in the teepee. So, and then you just pick up on it, after spending some time in it.
Does it get smoky in here when you build a fire?
No, it goes right out the top.
It's interesting to me how a person who's in the show business aspect of life could... I understand it, but it's interesting how you could just divorce yourself from all of that and come down here and live in a teepee. I think it's terrific. I wish I could do it.
Yeah, it gives you good energy and it gives you a lot of strength.
Do you have any idea how this place got to be named Martha's Vineyard? You heard any stories?
I knew you'd ask me that. I do remember reading, I think in a Chamber of Commerce material of some sort, that a sea captain came by, saw a beautiful island, and named it after his daughter, Martha.
That sounds like a sea story to me if I ever heard one.
Well, it probably is, because I tell you, don't find a lot of vineyards on Martha's Vineyard.
Well, there is one, and it's practically brand new. It's Chicama Vineyards.
Yes.
And the people who came here or were in our business, Kathy and George Matheson. And I bet they're out there working right now. Let's go see.
Find out more about the vineyard on Martha's Vineyard.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
Well, you find some bugs on your vines there?
No bugs. Taking off a few extra leaves.
Oh, is that something that you have to do often in these orchards?
Yeah, you'll have to come through and do that about 3 or 4 times during the summer.
Would you take a walk with us? We'd like to see what you have here.
Sure, be glad to show you that. Let's go up this way.
We were just saying, Kathy, that you would, less than anybody else in the vineyard, be surprised by television. But let's talk about that transition from the wife of a television executive leading that, social and economically prominent life. And
frustrating.
Yes, indeed.
And hard work, too.
Yes. Well, how did it happen? How did you go from that kind of life in California and to here?
Well, we used to spend lots of our vacations here on the vineyard, and we looked for a way so that we could live here permanently. We were not ready to retire yet, so we love wine, and we decided we'd like to make our own.
Kathy, how much land do you have here?
We have about 50 acres, and about 28 are planted now, and we'll have 40 planted when we're finished. We'll be about a 30,000-gallon winery.
Is the vineyard turning out to be a good place to grow grapes?
As far as we can tell, very good. The soil is right for it. The climate is very good. It's much like parts of Bordeaux in California.
Those are really sweet, aren't they?
Yes. And you're going to sell this wine exclusively on the vineyard for a while?
We'll have such a small amount in the beginning that we think the hotels and the bars and the liquor stores on the island will take all that we can produce in the beginning.
What in the world is that?
That's an electronic scarecrow. It's the modern version of this.
Well, this is the old type you hang on a piece of board there, but what does the other one do?
Well, it scares the birds out of the vineyard. It keeps them from eating the grapes, which they love.
Does it work?
It works pretty well.
You think this is a healthier environment than California or where Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, some of those other, Boston?
I think any time you're closer to nature, it's healthier for you. I think this is true for myself. I certainly believe it's so for my children.
Do you ever get lonely here, especially when the tourists leave?
No, it's lovely. That's another good thing about the vineyard. It's very lively in the summer with all of the extra guests that we have and the people who are interested in vineyards and our own friends from off-island. But the winter is quiet and you can read and paint, do all the things you never have time for.
But Kathy, how do you have time for anything when you've got 50 acres of grapes to take care of?
Oh, but the winter, there's not much to do.
No.
Well, how about your husband? Was he the typical executive type? I'm talking about George now. Was he high-strung, nervous, aggressive, that kind of person?
Yes.
Took you a while to get that out, didn't it?
Yes. I don't know any television executives who aren't. Right.
Has this changed him, this environment at all? Settled him down?
Except that I think he's now a very aggressive grape grower.
You mean his aggressiveness now is put back into the soil and growing something?
It's a kind and gentle aggressiveness.
We, like many people, when we first came to the island, wondered where you got Martha's Vineyard wine. And it seems like a natural thing to do, and therefore I guess we were surprised that nobody had done it. And indeed, the reaction that the liquor stores get on the island when they tell people that there's now a vineyard here is very similar. What we're doing here provides an opportunity not only for me to do something, but for my wife to do something. And this is something we can do together. And our children are similarly involved.
What do the Vineyard people feel about your being here? Have you heard any comment from the natives?
I think maybe they were a bit skeptical in the beginning, because no one has ever done it. They weren't sure, but now I think that they're very much for us.
Okay, off of the pump!
It depends upon me as well as George whether this whole thing will succeed or not. And I think that for me that's very satisfying. That I'm not just, taking care of the kids in the house, but I have an active role.
I started with my father when I was 6. My people have been here since 1642. They were all home up to my father's time. Oh, it's overfished. Too many men, too much gear, too many foreign vessels fishing out here, outside the 12-mile limit. They're catching up our breeding stock. They're getting almost to the point where it doesn't pay to go anymore. The point of the whole thing is, how much will people pay for a lobster? It's already reached a point where I can't understand why they do. When we're getting $2.25 a pound out of the boat, the consumer is paying plenty. And they're the poorest buy in the world as far as food value is concerned. We're buying shell and water. There isn't much meat in the lobster. I think lobsters have become a status symbol. Have you ever noticed when things get scarce and expensive, everybody has to have it? Well, I think that applies to lobsters. Why else would people pay $3.5, $4 a pound?
How long have you been a lobsterman, Mr. Poole?
64 years.
What would you do if you didn't fish?
Die.
Mr. Poole will never leave Martha's Vineyard. Why should he? His ancestors rest here. So will he. And probably his son.
They have here what most of us spend lifetimes looking for. Peace, work they enjoy, a close fellowship with their environment. And what else is there, really?
After 3 weeks here this summer, I have the funny feeling that I know what it's like to be home. It'll do that to you if you're ready.
Martha's Vineyard isn't for everybody.
But it's a place you'll never forget.
Guys, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can learn about Jaws, sharks, movie making, and everything in between. Also be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. And be sure to check out our website, thedailyjaws.com. Until next time, we drink to your legs. Farewell and adieu.